Have you ever felt the ground shift right under your feet? Well, in global politics, something exactly like that is happening right now. We're talking about a massive shakeup of old alliances and power structures, and it looks like Russia has a brand new playbook for this new world. And listen, this isn't just some minor tremor. We're talking about the world's top diplomat, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, warning of a, quote, great fracture in the global order. I mean, that's a huge deal. It's a fundamental split, and if you want to understand the world today, you have to understand this. So what kicked this whole thing into high gear? What was the catalyst for this great fracture? Well, it was Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. But here's the thing. This conflict didn't just start a war. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. It massively accelerated a global realignment that was already simmering just below the surface. Okay, so for decades, right, the world has pretty much operated under a system led by the West. You've probably heard it called the rules-based order. But that system, it's now facing its biggest challenge since the end of the Cold War. No question. We've got new powers rising, and guess what? They have very different ideas about how the world should be run. All right, so who are we talking about here? Who are these rising powers? Well, a lot of them are part of what we call the Global South. And it's super important to get this. This isn't just a dot on a map. It's not just a location. It's a whole group of nations. Think Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, that have these shared histories, especially with imperialism, and a really powerful common desire for total sovereignty on the world stage. So what we're really seeing is a clash of two totally different visions for the future. It's a battle of ideas. On one side, you've got the Western model, promoting democratic values, individual rights. And on the other side, you've got Russia and China, and they're pushing for what they call a multipolar world, one that's all about state sovereignty and traditional UN norms first and foremost. And this is where Russia's playbook really comes into focus. See, faced with being isolated by the West, Moscow didn't just sit back. It made a huge strategic pivot. It's now aggressively courting all those nations in the global South, trying to build a whole new set of alliances. And if you want proof of just how serious Moscow is about this, get this. A staggering 90%, 90 of its diplomats, the ones with deep country and language expertise, have been reassigned to focus squarely on the global South. I mean, that's not a subtle tweak. That's a complete overhaul of its entire foreign policy machine. So what's the sales pitch? How is Russia making its case? Well, it's a pretty powerful anti-Western story. They're telling these countries that Western-led globalization is really just neo-colonialism in disguise. They're saying the West's ideology is designed to undermine their sovereignty. And they're pointing to all the internal divisions and problems in the West, saying, look, they're in decline. And you know what? This message is working. It's incredibly effective because it's tapping right into something that's already there, a real desire for full sovereignty. These countries in the global South feel like their time has come, and they want a much bigger role on the world stage. And this isn't just talk, right? It's backed by cold, hard economics. There's been a massive economic shift. If you look at GDP based on purchasing power, which is a great way to compare economies, the BRICS nations, that core group, including Russia and China, are now actually bigger than the G7. That economic power, well, it gives them some serious leverage. Okay, but let's flip the coin here. Because this story isn't just about what Russia is doing right or the rise of the global South. It's also about a huge challenge for the West, a growing credibility problem. So you have to ask, right, why is the West losing its appeal? Why is its message just not landing the way it used to in so many parts of the world? Well, this credibility gap seems to come from a few key things. For one, there are all these accusations of double standards in foreign policy. Then there's the history of liberal interventions that, didn't always turn out so great. Add to that the political turmoil happening at home in some Western countries, which kind of diminishes the appeal of their model. And then, and this is a big one, there's this growing perception of a huge difference between the money and resources flowing to Ukraine versus what's being spent on other major global problems. So, okay, that's the problem. What's the solution? Given this whole new global reality, what's the next move for the West, and especially the G7? Because it's one thing to point out the issues. It's another to actually find a path forward. The brief we're looking at lays out a pretty clear three-step plan. Step 1, recalibrate the message. Basically, move past just demonizing rivals and start negotiating the rules of the road with the global South as real partners. Step 2, build equal partnerships.
This means getting rid of those old kind of patron-client dynamics and creating relationships that are actually on a level playing field. And step 3, invest in understanding. Seriously, boost the language skills and the cultural expertise to genuinely engage with these nations.
And really, this whole thing boils down to one huge provocative question. Can the West truly change its mindset? Can it start seeing these rising powers as new sovereign subjects of world history, instead of just objects to be dragooned onto the right side of history? In other words, can it treat them as independent players shaping their own destiny, not just pieces on a chessboard? The answer to that question is probably going to define the next chapter of global history. So there you have it. That's our deep dive into this massive global shift. And all the ideas we've talked about today come from a May 2024 policy brief from Think 7, which is the official engagement group for the G7. It's a really fascinating look at the choices and challenges that are going to shape all of our futures.
Thanks for watching.